I think there's a really positive future for democracy in Britain, actually. I think things like the Scottish referendum really engage people in debate. Votes at 16 is a really big, important debate. I actually think a discussion around the role of the individual and the role of the state and making people think about their role and their power in democracy is very positive. It's a real opportunity for democracy in Britain at the moment.
I think I'm probably less pessimistic than I think many people, because I think with devolution, I think we can see a situation where people will see power devolve to them, whether it be in cities or regions or even in the nations of the UK. And that can create a sense that things matter to people, and so people will be engaged by the issues and will hopefully start to return to the ballot box in greater numbers than they have in recent times. And I think, you know, whichever party you're talking about, we're all looking at devolution as the way forward, I think. And so I'm optimistic that devolution will mean an increase in engagement, an increase in representation and involvement in democracy. So yeah, I think that's the way we're going. I don't see an end anytime soon to the two-party system, as some people have said. I think that'll be around for a little while. I may be proved wrong. But I don't think we're not seeing, although new parties have arisen, we're not seeing them making great headway in terms of seats in Parliament. The other thing I would say is I'd like to see some reform of the second chamber of the House of Lords, and I think certainly that's something the Labour Party will be pushing for.
Well, I think the future of democracy in Britain is positive. I mean, I think certainly my experience in the run-up to this year's election was that more young people were getting engaged in politics. I had a team of young students back home in St Austell who were engaged with my campaign and supporting me, and I've continued to try to meet with them and keep them engaged. And I found a lot of young people were interested in politics. They didn't necessarily vote for me as a Conservative, but they were at least willing to debate the issues and engage in the process. So I think that's positive. So I think the more, the onus is on us as politicians to keep engaging as many people as possible, especially our young people, to get them engaged so that our political system has a positive future.
I think that it's really important, that question, actually. I know that sitting in the Commons, sometimes it's perplexing or difficult for us to understand how democracy is actually working if all of the Scottish or SNP MPs vote for particular amendments to the Scotland Bill, for instance, and then that's overturned by the other members of the House. That's challenging for us because the people in Scotland have sent us there with a particular mandate, but that mandate isn't necessarily always being respected. So that is difficult for us, and I think for democracy to work properly, it's important that people all over the UK feel that their voices are being heard. And since we've been sent here with a specific mandate, I think that it would be appropriate for the democratic process if the other parties recognise that, so that our voices could be heard and those of our constituents could be heard as well.
I think we're maybe seeing a wee example of it right now. I think digital democracy, interaction is going to be hugely important. We, as a new intake of MPs, I think are probably the most connected to our constituents of any MPs ever. People can tweet to us, they can email us, they can follow us on social media, we can be called to do interviews at a moment's notice on digital media. So that interaction between people, I think, is definitely the future of democracy and really holding us to account for the decisions that we make as elected representatives.
Depends on what people do with it. It's all about whether people vote, it's about whether they get involved, whether they get engaged, whether they get enthused, and they force politicians of all colours, of all persuasions to do the best thing for the country. So it's in your hands, it's not in mine. But for the purposes of what I think is going to happen with democracy, it's got to thrive, and we should be so proud of it. We're about to celebrate 100 years of women having the vote, 100 years of women being in this place. Those are important things, and now we've got to see what we're going to do with it.
The future of democracy in Britain is bright as long as young people are involved and engaged. We see what happens when you don't have democracy, countries really suffer, so it's really important. Optimistic about the future.
That's a good question. We as an SNP, we've got a lot of concerns about democracy in the UK at the moment. Again, looking at it at different levels, I'm one of 56 SNP MPs, so we effectively represent Scotland. That's 56 out of 59 seats. Now for democracy for us, we got over 50% of the vote in Scotland, so we truly represent the majority of the electorate in Scotland. But yet at the moment, Any amendments we're putting forward in the Scotland bill is getting defeated by the government. Now, the government's only got one Conservative MP in Scotland, but yet they're using the votes of the English and Welsh MPs to vote against the Scottish MPs' proposals. Later on today there's an emergency debate on English votes for English laws. Now that's supposed to correct what's perceived to be an imbalance whereby there's some devolved matters like health and education where Scottish MPs can vote on English health and education matters in Westminster, but English MPs can't vote in Scotland. Now we in SNP, if a matter is purely English only, we won't vote on it, but a lot of English or English and Welsh matters, although on the face of it they might seem English only, they might be budget consequential, so it might affect the budget that goes to Scotland. So therefore normally we would vote on that because it can affect budget and set up in Scotland. But the Tory government's proposing to change the system to effectively eliminate Scottish MPs' votes, and they want to do that by changing standing orders rather than by having a bill that gets through Parliament and gets debated properly and then we go to the House of Lords and be debated. So they just want to change committee standing orders, and therefore it would be up to the Speaker to make a decision on his own, is this matter English only or is it not? And that potentially politicises the Speaker, who's meant to be neutral, so it's fraught with real risks and it's not been thought through properly at all. Also interestingly, a London MP pointed out he can't vote in some matters because of the London Assembly at the moment, but they've not considered that under this evil, so there's already different devolution strands and the government's not taking cognizance of that. And lastly, in terms of democracy, we're still stuck with that big building behind us, which is the House of Lords, which for me personally is an affront to democracy when you've got unelected lords in there and they can help change the laws.